right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we are talking about Poolman, the directorial debut from actor Chris Pine, which, depending on who you listen to, is the worst movie of the year, but I loved it, and so did my guest, Joe Black. We had a great time with this one, and we had a great time talking about it. These kinds of movies are right up my alley, and I think Chris Pine did a great job here with his first time making a movie that he's also starring in. We'll get into it as we get into the conversation, but before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together, wherever it is that you're listening. You can also follow us on social media at PiecingPod. Join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. And don't forget to check out our Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I've currently got a bunch of advanced episodes of Piecing It Together. There's also video versions exclusively of some episodes, including this one that you're listening to right now. And a bunch of other great content from Awesome Movie Year and from my music career. It's patreon.com/bydavidrosen. And with that said, let's get into this conversation about Poolman. All right, Joe Black is back with us. We're going to talk about Poolman. And I feel like the first thing I should mention here is, Joe, you and I were really looking forward to this one, even though I think from the get-go, people kind of had it out for this movie. Does it seem that way?
Well, yes. I mean, funny enough, I saw it before it even premiered at TIFF and got all that backlash. I saw it at a test screening more than a year ago.
Wow.
And it was funny. He was there. Chris Pine was there at this test screening, and I felt so bad for him because so many people were walking out. I've been to a lot of test screenings, but so many people were walking out of it. And I was really enjoying the movie. And at the end of it, they give you the little card to fill out, and I'm filling out the card. And they had this one person, she was walking around asking people what they rated it. She comes up to me and she's like, and what did you rate the film? And I said, excellent. And she goes, really? And everyone around me laughed. Like, they all started laughing. And you could tell she felt bad. She's like, oh, no. It's just, you're the first. And she asked me, she was like, do you want to be in a focus group for it? I said, sure, of course. I go to sit in the focus group, and right before it starts, she comes back up to me. She goes, hey, just a heads up, you're the only person who rated this higher than a fair. So you're going to be kind of alone up here. Is that okay? And I was like, oh, you don't know who you're talking to. I'm used to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Story of my life. But I did. I defended that movie adamantly. And I'll say it's no different than what I saw. So, you know what I mean? Like, good on them for just being like, no, this is the movie we made,
Yeah, absolutely. It's a specific thing, and we'll talk about it as we're getting through puzzle pieces and stuff. But I think he definitely knew what he wanted to make, and people who say it's a mess or it's just all over the place or whatever they say, I don't see that at all. Even if I maybe didn't like it as much as you did, I did really enjoy the movie. But I think that it could have been a little funnier. I think it could have been a little more put together, but I don't think it's the mess people are making it out to be. I think he made exactly the movie he wanted to make. This we talk about these shaggy dog stories all the time. This is a very shaggy dog movie, and I think it's exactly what he set out for.
Well, yeah, and I know that on your letterbox you have a 3.5, and if you're talking like competence, you know what I mean, like the objective measurements that we use for film. Like what you're saying, 3.5 out of 5, I think that's actually pretty fucking accurate. You're right. He did know what kind of movie he wanted to make. It is very clear that he didn't know how to make a movie, right?
Sure.
But that doesn't really matter necessarily, given this kind, you know what I mean? It's not like he was like, I really want to make Pretty Woman. No, he's like, I want to make a movie about this overstressed, crazy, meditative pool man solving a mystery. So there's leeway for you to be who you are instead of having to adhere to a way to do things. And so my enthusiasm for it stems out of that's what I prioritize. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between a mess and a shit show. There's a big difference between that. Because,
sure.
I mean, it takes a mess to make a meal. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, let's start getting into some of those puzzle pieces. What do you have for your first puzzle piece here?
I mean, we'll just get the obvious one out of the way, which is Inherent Vice. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
he had to have gotten this made because of Inherent Vice,
Hmm.
or at the very least, use that as his excuse for when things weren't quite like making sense. He's like, "So what?
Yeah,
Have you seen Inherent Vice?"
sure.
Um, and it's funny because I've seen the Poolman 3 times now, and
Hmm.
the first time I saw it, the movie made perfect sense to me.
Mm.
Like it actually clicked with me in a real way, and and everyone else in the group was like, "Oh, this doesn't make sense." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure it does," like. But Inherent Vice, as we talked about, which is my favorite movie of all time,
Mm.
the first time I saw that movie, I was like, "What the fuck is going on? I have no idea what's happening," and I hated that. But I even said at the end of watching it the first time, I was like, "I know one day I'll like this movie. Right
Sure.
now, I hate it, but I
Yeah.
will like this movie." And now, 10 years later, when I watch Inherent Vice, which is way too often, according to my wife, when
Mm.
I watch Inherent Vice, it makes perfect sense to me, and I feel
Mm.
like a buffoon for not understanding it to begin with. Um, and yeah, I mean, but you're talking about a master versus a novice. You know what I mean? So Paul Thomas Anderson, he can get away with making something that nobody understands because he's so inherently, no pun intended, brilliant
Hey, hey, hey.
as a filmmaker. But Chris Pine, people were looking for, I mean, he's had a target on his back from minute one. It's like, oh, wait, you're handsome and
Hmm.
talented and you're getting good roles and you actually have a real personality and want to do interesting things. Oh, now you're going to be a director? Fuck you.
And let's not
Like,
forget how much people hate Nepo babies. So, that's a whole
exactly
thing right now. But
the tragedy that you're a Nepo baby because your dad was on Chips.
yeah,
But
sure.
yeah, I think that if a more seasoned filmmaker had made this same movie the exact same way, people would have been much more forgiving of it. But
I
they were
think so
looking
too.
for, yeah, they know that it's the first, so they can pick it apart without, consequence.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I definitely one that I was thinking about, Inherent Vice, and I feel like you can kind of draw a line. So the other obvious one that we got to bring up is Chinatown. I'll just use it as my first one here. I actually just watched it for the first time today. I knew I couldn't do this conversation without having seen it, and it's hilarious, the meta aspect of this movie, of this guy who, you're talking about him, being, this first time filmmaker as a director and not really being cut out for what he's trying to do. And what he's trying to do is make Chinatown. And, his character is even a guy who is sitting around watching Chinatown all day and talking about how awesome it would be to make a Chinatown or be in a Chinatown. And so it's like, it's got that meta aspect to it too. But you've got the detective story, you've got all of the water involved, as being a pool instead is a very hilarious, like, little like callback to all that. Um, there's a lot of ways that you can tie this in aside from just the, specific references within the movie. And I also think you could draw a straight line through Chinatown, through Inherent Vice to this. And it makes me wonder, like, a lot of movies, you could do a breaking it apart on Chinatown and talk about so many movies inspired by that film. Will we see in like 20, 30 years movies inspired by Inherent Vice? I feel like we will. Movies that are just these big swings with layers upon layers upon layers of things to figure out, where most people kind of walk out and are just like, the hell did I just watch? Like you were the
I
first time, and like I still am, but eventually come around on it, which I'm sure I will at some point.
I think we've already started to see them. Poolman is one of them, and another one. I'm sure one of us will bring up first. I'm sure it's on both of our lists. We'll bring it up later, but I think we're already seeing the effect because I think a lot of filmmakers were very jealous of Inherent Vice when it came
Mm.
out because they've all want the excuse to just do whatever comes naturally to them versus having to fit what they do into. I actually would argue that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a result of Inherent Vice.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but to Chinatown, what's really funny is that I just made a film called Suffrage,
Yes.
and this very kindred spirits suffrage in this movie,
A
and
hundred percent. Yeah.
people had accused me in Suffrage of taking my main character has a bandage on her nose the whole time. They're like, "Oh, like Chinatown." Well,
Yeah.
here's the thing, David. I had not seen Chinatown. It's
Mm.
one that I just never. I don't really like Polanski's movies. It's
Yeah.
not art versus the artist, which I think is stupid because an artist shows you who they are in their art.
Mm.
Anyways, I don't like him, and so I watched Chinatown when I was right before we premiered Suffrage, which was like a month before I saw Poolman.
Uh-huh.
And when I saw Poolman, I actually said in the focus group, this is like if Inherent Vice and the Big Lebowski got together to tell the story of Chinatown in a way that I gave a shit about. They asked me to repeat that one too, like beat for beat, like what I just said. But Chinatown for me, I actually, not only do I like the Two Jakes more marginally, but also I think the Two Jakes, its sequel, is more of a puzzle piece for Poolman.
Interesting.
Because that one you've got Jack Nicholson directing.
Sure.
And
that
movie is also a big, wild, insane swing that's coming from a more psychological place, like Forgittous. And so it's like Poolman, we're more in like this scatterbrained, eccentric psyche of Darren in Poolman than we are in Chinatown. I just didn't buy it when I saw Chinatown. Like, I didn't buy anything that I was seeing, especially the very end. Like, I mean, spoilers, when she gets shot in the head, I was like, I don't buy that he would have hit her from that far away. And I don't I just wasn't, it didn't do it for me. And I think part of that is Polanski's whole thing. Here's the thing. I'm not criticizing Roman Polanski. I'm not. It's not even a criticism. I just do not connect with his perspective. Which is not, that's not my way of criticizing him or Chinatown. What he's all about doesn't connect with me at all. Kubrick's the same way. So, take that for what it is. I much preferred the Two Jakes, even though I think they're equally good movies.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, and I'm going to actually watch the Two Jakes sometime soon. I'm very curious to see, like you just said, as far as it as a puzzle piece here, I mean, we might as well throw it on the list, but as the actor coming back to direct their own sequel, I'm very curious to see how that kind of comes together. So it's definitely something I'm looking forward to checking out. But what do you got for your next piece?
I have I Heart Huckabees.
Okay. Yeah.
Which, because I mean, this whole movie, he's a detective. But really what he's in is like he's more going on like a metaphysical or a philosophical.
He's working through stuff.
Exactly, which is the kind of root of I Heart Huckabees. And in I Heart Huckabees, Jason Schwartzman is an activist who writes every day. He writes poetry, not letters to Aaron Brockovich.
Sure.
But he also has, it's one of the funniest lines ever, his poem about the rock. And he's like, you rock. But he also has these two figures in Lily Tomlin and Dustin Hoffman, who are the existential detectives that he's hired, that kind of take on a mother-father kind of dynamic with him.
Sure.
Much to his chagrin. And then you've also got Mark Wahlberg, who's kind of his unintentional sidekick who actually just keeps kind of fucking things up.
Sure.
And then you have the evil seductress, the femme fatale, coming in and like distracting him from his true mission of, and then you've got the Huckabees representative, Jude Law, who's like, trying to get this new Huckabees open. And he likes Jason Schwartzman, despite him trying to like get his, much like, Clancy Brown in Poolman.
Sure.
They have that whole scene. He gives him a canoe and he actually likes the canoe.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, and he
thinks it's really cool
on his desk.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that there's a lot of similarities there too. And it's funny. I used to be on when I Heard Huckabees came out, I loved it. I was in film school. It was great. And I was all about David O'2 names, as I called him at the time, David O. Russell. I thought he was just genius. And then that movie stopped his career for more than half a decade. And when I rewatched it, as an adult, I was like, oh yeah, this is really bad. But I'm glad he made it. But then I watched it while I was making Natasha Hall, and I was like, no, I was right the first time. This movie's fucking great. And I missed that David O. Russell, and he finally came back with Amsterdam. So
yeah, I wish I was on the Amsterdam wavelength with you, Joe, but I do love I Heart Huckabees, and it's a great puzzle piece. I hadn't thought about all those connections, but yeah, there is a lot there that lines up just perfectly. And I was curious because I've only seen Poolman once, but about that whole kind of found family thing with the parental figures, even though they're not really, are they or are they not? Because like I wasn't 100% sure. At
No,
one point I thought they were his parents, and his mom just happens to be his therapist, which is a whole other thing.
no.
But
His mom left him, abandoned him under that tree. That's what the tree is. The
oh
tree
yeah,
is,
yeah, yeah.
and I think that that's kind of the beauty of the metaphor of the tree is that he's inherently connected to water, which is what makes the tree grow.
Sure,
And the
sure.
tree can be beautiful, or a tree can be the thing that keeps you, from being able to, reach the sky.
Hmm.
Um, that's like one like actual criticism I would lobby at the movie is that at the very end of the film, spoilers, at the very end of the film, they catch the bad guy. They then it cuts to him having his epiphany about what the tree means, to him and his therapist and her husband swimming in the pool, then to them premiering their documentary,
Hmm.
right? And then I would have swapped those two. I would have had the bad guy getting caught, cut to them playing it as the documentary, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Cutting to that footage being played as the documentary into his swimming with them, having the epiphany, and then right to that Aaron Brockovich picture and putting I think that would have hit like a lot harder.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
curious as to why they didn't do that. But that's the one thing that I'll like objectively say, flop that around and you win over at least the people who stayed begrudgingly. They're like,
Yeah,
okay, he at
yeah.
least had a point.
Who didn't walk out yet. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I Heart Huckabee's great one. You mentioned it in passing, but I'm going to include it on my list, an obvious one here. But as far as these Shaggy Dog detective movies go, The Big Lebowski, I think, is the one that fits the most on this list. I was describing this movie to a friend of mine, and I said, you know the scene where the dude has been knocked out and wakes up at Jackie Treehorn's mansion, and then he wakes up and he starts tracing that piece of paper, and there's somebody had drawn a cartoon of a guy with a big dick on it. That and he's just like, what the hell is this? Like he can't make heads or tails of what exactly he just uncovered. That's this movie, I feel like. For 90 minutes, it's that scene stretched out. It's this guy who is just completely not in it. He doesn't know what is happening at any moment. And I can see why some people maybe just can't connect with that, I guess. But to me, I find it hilarious. And I think Chris Pine is hilarious in the role. I think he's so committed to it. And it is such a fun performance, even though there are layers to it that, some of that stuff with the mom, like you were mentioning, like there is more to it than just funny. But, I think that he is great, though, as a comedic presence here and is definitely doing something very much like that sequence in The Big Lebowski.
Well, yeah, I mean, and let's not forget when The Big Lebowski came out, people didn't like it either. But
Exactly. Yeah.
but Chris Pine, I went to a screening of this where he talked afterward, and he said that he came up with this character, that this character was all of his favorite things about himself.
Hmm.
Like that's what this character is,
Ooh, that
like
must hurt when
this is
everybody
his.
says it's the worst movie like of the entire
Oh
year.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
but yeah, but I mean, like he's been in this industry long enough. He knows how it
Sure.
works, and he knows how like social viruses spread, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure he's fine. He was talking about he's already got another one that he's putting together the budget for to make another movie.
Nice.
So good for him. But here's the thing. I having pondered on this for more than a year now. Yes, Big Lebowski, of course, you can't help it. But I think the reason why this probably won't have the same zeitgeist behind it is because Darren, Chris Pine's character, cares so much.
Mm,
And it's not cool to care.
no,
You know
it's
what I mean?
not.
And the Big Lebowski, what makes him so cool is that he just doesn't care. His attitude is like, fuck it, man. You
Yeah.
know? That's not Darren at all. Like
Mhm.
Darren is full of conviction. And I think that people are a little scared of that. You know what I
Mm.
mean? I think that like if Darren had been more like the Big Lebowski or something like that, people would have like, oh, I get it, like, but no, he's a call to arms.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's also part of why people have rejected this movie. But again, people didn't like the Big Lebowski when it came out either.
Yeah.
That had to do with the expectation of the Fargo coming before it and stuff. But
Sure.
um, I've played this game long enough myself that I know when something's going to come around.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I hated Under the Silver Lake when I saw it. I was like, God damn it, this is an unwatchable piece of shit, but give it 2 years even, and people are going to talk about how this is a misunderstood masterpiece. And it's not. Which is my next puzzle piece, by the way.
Oh, okay, there you go. Right.
That fucking stupid movie. You know, there have actually been a handful of LA movies that have come out lately in the last like 5 years or so that like so perfectly capture that part of LA that's why people have rejected it. Like You People, the Jonah Hill movie. That movie is the most accurate representation of West Hollywood I've ever seen in my life. And then that show, The Idol, that came out last year.
Yeah.
That is the most accurate representation of the Westwood, Brentwood, Beverly Hills, Malibu, like the elite class. That is the most accurate. And both of those things were like totally rejected by people.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, that's because you're actually looking at the truth as to who these people who run media are, right? Under the Silver Lake, when I was first watching it the first time, hated it from minute one.
Yeah.
Absolutely despised it. But I went to see it in good faith. I always do. You know this about me, that like I never go to something to hate it, except for Saltburn. That was the one time. But Under the Silver Lake, at first I was like, I know why I hate this, because I hate all of these Echo Park Silver Lake fuckers. Like these like aged out hipsters who think they know everything, like fuck them. And at first I was like, this is so accurate. But then I realized halfway through, oh, no, it's not, actually. This is somebody like that making a movie about their idealist version of themselves. So, like, it's like this totally romanticized version of a fucking Silver Lake Echo Park aging hipster, which the director is. He's 45 years old, and he makes every female in his movies get as naked as possible, as often as possible. Rings kind of funky to me. But it's him romanticizing who he and they are, and that's why I absolutely hated it. If it had been truthful, at the very least, I might have had a little bit of a spark for it, like I do with You People, which I didn't like, but I liked how accurate it was, and The Idol, which I flat out loved, because of how truthful it was. But Under the Silver Lake remains a ghastly, stupid, awful piece of shit.
I love that movie.
Subjectively.
I didn't bring it up. It's not on my list, but it is one that I was definitely thinking about. I'm glad you brought it up, even though you don't like it. But no, I really like that movie. And I think as far as like Poolman and that movie, like even if you don't like Under the Silver Lake, you can see a character who is, into all kinds of weird stuff and conspiracies and, various theories and things like that they just kind of pepper throughout. There's a lot of little things that Darren believes in, and his buddy, played by John Ortiz, who, is hilarious in this movie, but little things that they don't really explore, but they're just there peppered throughout that you're like, oh, okay, I kind of get who these guys are.
Yeah, but again, like part of like first of all, I think the main reason most people like that movie is because they've never been to Silver Lake or Echo Park, and they don't know these fucking goblins exist. But also, again, look at Darren versus why am I just forgetting his name? Andrew Garfield. Right in Under the Silver Lake, he is unemployed, but still has a fucking place. Every girl he meets wants to sleep with him. He bests the bad guy. You know what I mean? He literally destroys capitalism with his guitar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he's this romantic version of a fucking piece of crap. Darren, you've got like one of the most handsome actors in Hollywood burying himself underneath, hiding away from us in this shaggy Slavic thing. He has a fucking job that he actually cares about. And he's trying to connect with this woman who's more of a mother figure, but like he's not, like it's not. And the one woman who is like this gorgeous whatever, she's actually tricking him. You know what I mean? Like, so again, there's nothing for these people who fancy themselves the hero of their own story to like latch onto in the way that Under the Silver Lake has.
Fair. I could see it. I am going to go, speaking of handsome leading men, I'm going to go with a character.
What about me?
I'm going to go with a character for my next puzzle piece, not any one particular movie, but Ernest P. Worrell. I feel like this character is similar to Ernest in that he's not too smart, but he's not a dumb guy. He's just this regular, blue collar working guy who just happens to get himself into these weird situations in every movie. And you could see Ernest P. Worrell getting himself into a detective mystery like what unfolds in Poolman with all of the politics and everything that kind of comes along with it. And it wouldn't be that different from the way that Darren kind of takes on all of these things and tries to piece everything together within the movie. It would be kind of similar to an Ernest movie, except for, arguably more for grown-ups, I guess.
If they reboot Ernest with Chris Pine after this, I will be so happy. What a great, oh man, you've just won. Yes, absolutely correct. That's so great. You're absolutely right. Because Ernest is so funny. I mean, even the name Ernest, that's what he is. He's a very earnest, but he's childlike. He's naive, not stupid. He's naive, and he's very excitable and creative. Yes. And the cynicism of the world has not fucked with his creativity or eccentricity. You know what I mean? Sure. So you're right on the money there. Versus like Pee Wee Herman, which was happening around the same time, who's very similar, but Pee Wee Herman is also a narcissist, and that's part of the comedy. Is that and I don't even mean that in a negative way, but like a Ron Burgundy type character. So like Pee Wee is the narcissistic version of Ernest. Wow, what a great piece. You're absolutely right. I knew I liked this movie, and I knew I liked you.
There you go.
Because you know how much I love Ernest.
I know.
That's my boy.
Absolutely. I got to go on an Ernest marathon one of these days. I haven't seen him in way too long, but
I'll be there soon.
What do you got for your next piece?
Okay, I only have one more.
Okay,
and it's this kind of groovy movie I saw for the first time earlier this year. I've been meaning to see it for a long time. It's called Cisco Pike. It's a 70s movie. It's Chris Christopherson.
Okay.
And Karen Black and Gene Hackman. And it's about this hippie folk singer, Venice Beach hippie folk singer who used to sell dope, trying to go straight and clean. But then this crooked narcotics officer basically blackmails him into selling a bunch of dope for him.
Okay.
And Chris Christopherson carries it around in like a guitar case, a la El Mariachi. But it's a very funny, but also very like chill, laid back, Venice Beachy vibe kind of movie. That's the main difference between it and Poolman, is that Poolman is just full of energy, but Cisco Pike is very laid back and kind of chill. And like Poolman, Cisco Pike is dealing with the way that politics and counterculture are actually like in cahoots. The way that politics figure out counterculture in a way to be able to use them to their advantage. Hello. And then it's also specifically about what it's like to live in Los Angeles. Like Poolman is very much about like East LA, DTLA. Like it kind of ignores the West Side. Like, I mean, he talks about going to Santa Anita, which is, I mean, that's past Pasadena, and Altadena, and they actually go to the Santa Anita racetrack and they see him in Chinatown. Like, it's very East LA, but it's about East LA and living in East LA. I mean, all the food, all the landmarks, and that's very similar to Cisco Pike, which is a really cool, and also has a really good soundtrack. Which this movie has a great score and soundtrack actually. So Cisco Pike, highly recommend it. And actually, that's one of those movies that you can watch on YouTube. Like, they have the whole thing in HD for free on YouTube.
Nice. Yeah, what a cast. That that sounds like it's great. I'm gonna definitely have to check that out. I hadn't even heard of that movie, but I like it. I'll go with one last piece. It's one I've brought up as a puzzle piece before on the show, and we actually did an episode on a while back, but it's The Beach Bum, the Harmony Korine film. I mean, as far as an actor just going all out for a very unique kind of character who happens to be shirtless most of the time, long hair, hanging out by water. I was thinking about your Letterboxd review, actually, when I put this on my list, because that line in it that I really like, the double-sided coin of innocence and naivety, it's kind of like a different version of that in a way. It's just like, just living his life in this like the most optimistic kind of way, just like whatever happens, happens. That's the beach bum way. And our character here, Darren, is a little bit more high strung, a little bit more trying to figure it all out. But you can definitely see connections between these two characters and the movies themselves. I feel like, when it's not getting into the whole mystery of it all, it is definitely about somebody who is just kind of trying to figure it all out, and doing that shirtless by water most of the time.
Yeah, and what's funny is that I feel like what you're saying is Beach Bum is like the exact midpoint between Big Lebowski and Poolman, in that he is somebody who like just doesn't, he's just living a groovy life, doesn't want to but what happens is he's forced to face the fact that he's actually been leeching off of society.
Mm-hmm.
And so the guilt of that, while simultaneously having to like try to reassimilate, drives him crazy. And that's why I love the end of the Beach Bum, where he's like, no, I actually have to cut myself off.
Yeah.
Even though I know how to do this, because I don't want to care.
Yeah.
Like so there's more honesty. So he pretends to kill himself so that he can just go away.
Mm-hmm.
And not have to give a shit. And I really respect that. You know what I mean? It's like all these like Hollywood celebrities are like, oh, if Trump wins, I'm moving to France. It's like, how many of them do? The Beach Bum did. You know what I mean? Like so that's one of the reasons I love that movie, because he's more brave than 95% of the people who talk.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's a great piece. And I think the energy of that movie too exists in the same kind of space as Poolman.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. If only Martin Lawrence had been in Poolman. No, we got Stephen Tobolowsky, though. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And also John Ortiz is hilarious, I think. And, of course, Danny DeVito and Annette Bening. They're both great in this. I
think everyone's solid.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, everyone does their job in this movie. I mean, even the fucking waiter who speaks French but isn't. Everybody does their job in it, too. Like, that's something really hard to do when you're an actor the first time, especially when you're friends with all the people you're casting. You have a tendency to let them just like do their thing. But I don't know if this was by his design or not. He found a way to make all of the performances coherent and serviceable at the same time.
Yeah.
So, that's not easy to do. And good for him.
Absolutely. Well, I'll read down the list of puzzle pieces here, and then we'll get into some closing thoughts. For Poolman, we talked about Inherent Vice, Chinatown and the Two Jakes, I Heart Huckabees, The Big Lebowski, Under the Silver Lake, Ernest P. Worrell, Cisco, Pike, and The Beach Bum. We were just talking about, the cast, how, they were all pretty great. Like, they all had their moments. I don't know, any other closing thoughts? Actually, I'll just throw one out there right now. The score, I thought, was fantastic. Really, this movie looks great, too. Like, everything about it is, like, very assured from, cinematography and score and all of that. I again, not to like harp on, critics not liking this movie. I get it that it's like weird, and I get it that it's, a little funky and all, but if nothing else, it looks and sounds great.
Yeah, they shot it in 20 days too. Like that's another thing that like, I shoot a lot of my movies in 10 days. Like that's kind of, where I like the sweet spot, but I've been working with some DPs recently who are just like, that's not enough time. We need at least 25 days. And I'm like, I don't know that you do, like, for what we're doing, and the Poolman has like, it's a bigger movie, like a lot of locations, a lot of action, a lot of characters. And like you said, it actually does look really good. And not only does it look good, it has a perspective. It's not like, it doesn't look like everything else that's getting made right now. You know what I mean? Like there is a vision behind it.
Yeah.
And that matters a lot, a few people out here have compared the movie to The Long Goodbye, and there's a reason why I didn't put that on the puzzle pieces, because
it was one I was thinking about.
I don't think it's accurate, because The Long Goodbye is about somebody who's a detective who has been burned out by how things are changing, and he is more competent, and he is more like but this movie's not. This movie's about somebody who's been trying to affect change his whole life and has been unsuccessful. I think that like tonally and it's very different, and the character's very different. If not, I actually think it is more Chinatown than than The Long Goodbye. Hell, I think he even mentions this in the movie. I think it's more Roger Rabbit than
Yeah,
it is
yeah,
even
Roger Rabbit.
Chinatown. You know what I mean? Like Darren is a cartoon.
Well, I would also say, speaking of Altman, I was actually thinking more of the player than the long goodbye. As far as
Yeah.
everybody being like Hollywood people, like failed actors or people who are still trying to make some kind of project, and so yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of that in there. I think there's some long goodbye in there, but I get your points though on why you think that it's not like really the best comparison to make.
Yeah, I mean, like, because we could go on for days, and they're all kind of like basic obvious things at this point, like The Long Goodbye, or but yeah, I think at the end of the day, like, one thing I really want to respect about this movie is that while it is in this subgenre of the shaggy LA detective, I think it is a very unique movie,
Yeah.
like unique to itself. I really do. I don't think that it's derivative.
Hmm.
I think that it comes from somebody who's lived their whole life in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
but like it's so yeah, I really do. I love this movie, and I have it on Letterboxd as a 5-star movie. And again, I'm not saying that like the technical proficiency and the objective whatever that it's a 5-star movie. What I'm saying is that what I value and what I prioritize, this movie exceeds that greatly.
Mm.
And in a landscape that's becoming more and more kind of close-minded, and worse than that, in a landscape that is more and more corrupt, that is more and more like they have the illusion of it being cool to care, but it's not really.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It's cool to look like you care. It's
Yeah.
cool
Sure.
to say you care.
Yeah.
And when somebody actually does, look what society does to the movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
nobody's sticking up for the movie even on those terms.
Well,
So
I will say, to the point, just to wrap it up, to the point of, whether this is something that people will eventually find and start to like really respect, like kind of reassess it at some point or anything like that. I do have another Letterbox mutual with it at 5 stars. It's not just you.
oh.
So, hey, never know. Some people are going to connect with this more than the critics have. But I think that does it for Pool Man. Joe, is there another movie you watched recently you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, there is. Well, I have watched a couple here recently that I've really loved, but I'm gonna kind of what I want to like just put it out there that a dear close friend of mine, and a collaborator of mine, Ron Thompson, passed away
Mm,
here recently, and it is a shame because I thought he would really have loved this movie.
yeah.
He was a brilliant actor, really good guy, really great friend, kind of like a father figure to me out here in LA as well. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to promote his movie American Pop. Like
Okay.
I'm sure that a lot of people have heard of it. I'm sure but I watched it after he passed. Not that I needed to, because I know that movie like the back of my hand, or like my forearm with my
Mm.
tattoo. But uh, it is actually like a truly moving and exciting and funny, epic, like rock and roll masterpiece from 1981. It's an animated film. It's rotoscoped, and it's directed by the brilliant Ralph Bakshi and Ron. It's about 4 generations of a Jewish Russian immigrant family throughout the 1900s in America, and how they directly influenced pop music. And Ron plays 2 of the generations in it, and like I've seen that movie in the theater like 4 or 5 times actually, and I've never and most of the time with fresh audiences who haven't seen the film, and that movie never fails to get people to give it a standing ovation by the end of it. And it's another
Mm.
movie that at the time was misunderstood and ignored, and has now 30 to 40 years later really had a beautiful resurgence. And like Chris Pine in this movie, Ron's performance in that is unlike anything you will see in any other movie. So I just, in memory and honor of Ron, I highly recommend people check out American Pop. It'll become a new favorite, like for
Yeah.
anybody.
That's been on my watch list for a while now. I am definitely going to have to watch that soon. But yeah, right on. Joe, where can people find you, and what do you got coming out?
We are on. We have a Facebook group for my production company, Blue Means Pregnant Films. We also have the website, bluemeanspregnantfilms.com. We have a couple movies right now on Tubi and Amazon. Natasha Hall and its sequel, Suffrage, which are very similar to Pool Man. Both of those
Oh yeah.
movies are very in the same boat. I think it was even after this movie when you texted me and you asked me if I had to compare Poolman to one movie, what would it be? I think I said Suffrage. I think it was Poolman.
You were 100% right too. Yeah.
Yeah. For better or worse, that's what I would have done with $5 million. But yeah, and we're gearing up to make another movie here. Budget pending. We've been working on a few scripts that are at varying levels of budget, and hopefully I'll have a budget secure in the next week or two here. And depending on what that budget is, we'll be off to the races, and it'll be available, a couple months after that, I'm sure, because we like to we move quick because life is short.
Yes, absolutely. Joe, as always, great having you here, and I'm sure we'll get you back again sometime soon.
Sounds great.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about Poolman. Thank you to Joe Black for joining me on that one, and thank you to all of you for listening. If you're enjoying piecing it together, make sure you are subscribed because we've got a lot of episodes on the way. I think I've got like 6 or 7 in the can at the moment right now, which is kind of ridiculous, but there's too many great movies out there that I want to watch and cover and talk about with people. So make sure you're subscribed. You'll find out about all those new episodes as they come out. And also, if you have any puzzle pieces for Poolman, please send them in. I'd love to hear what you thought. We could have easily gone into a few more at least. I had a couple in mind, but maybe you've got some that you want to send in. I will read them on the next trailers episode, and I'd love to hear from you. Also, maybe you'd like to be on an episode of Piecing It Together sometime, or just want to let me know how you're enjoying the show. So get in touch. I love hearing from people. You can follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. Join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. Also, you can email me directly on the website, piecingpod.com. Also, if you happen to be listening on Good Pods or Spotify, you can comment right there on the episode and give any puzzle pieces or any thoughts on the conversation. So do that. Also, maybe drop a little 5-star rating and review. That would be very helpful. And I told you about the Patreon at the top of the show, so check that out. Make sure, if you're in Las Vegas, to come out to our live show at Maya Cinemas next week, May 23rd on Furiosa. It's going to be an amazing show with Sam Novak, Tony Gonzalez, and Shahab Sargari. It's going to be a great show. Maya Cinemas, May 23rd, 6 p.m., Furiosa. Can't wait. And with that said, let's close this out with a piece of music like I always do. And I got a good one for this one. You guys know, hopefully, that I just recently released a little novelty album of songs about my pets, the Pup Pups Variety Snaps. It's the second album from the Pup Pups, my album of songs by, for, about dogs, cats, etc. But they had another album before that last year, and on that album, it's called Who Wants Din Din, there was a song called Wet Dog about taking our dogs to the pool, and that feels like a good fit here to play on Poolman. So let's close it out with Wet Dog from the first Pup Pups album, and we'll be back with more Piecing It Together real soon. Wet dog running around, you're a wet dog, you crazy little hound, you're a wet dog with a smile on your face, running around all over the place. Summer's hot, the water's cool, let's go out and take a dip in the pool. We get there
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.